Okay, so Eli, we're going to start all over again. Try it again. So my question was, how did you feel after you got through with the project so far?
Um, I'm really extremely happy because I know people encouraging future pastors to learn to know more about God, and especially to learn about justification by faith. Because I don't know if you guys read my paper, but I lived by justification by works, and that's really a miserable life, I can say. And knowing that there are going to be people teaching that it pains me, it gives me, it hurts me just knowing that some pastor might teach a different gospel, and I have both ends. I had the chance to. I have been a leader in a church for the last 12 years, and pretty much my first 5 years, I hurt people because of that. So just knowing that I like there's a group of people encouraging pastors, learning, living salvation by faith, righteousness by faith, like that's really give me make me happy.
Excellent. Well, very good. I'm enjoyed reading through your paper, and so I'd like to just kind of walk through and just let's just talk about what is done thus far. Um, so I'd be interested in knowing how do you feel as you've had a chance to look through some of the research materials? How do you feel about the work Jones and Wagner were called to do?
I have read a little bit more than the about that subject because when I started to study theology, I think was taking history at SDA Church when I encountered that situation, and I feel that they were called with a purpose, to because in that time, church was living in salvation by works, and they needed a message. The church needed the message of salvation, and like just knowing that in the beginning, the church was not supporting that message is it is like it is insane. Now that I know salvation by justification by faith, and I'm really happy how God used LNGY to support and to teach it, to teach the right salvation. It wasn't about leaving the law aside, but like I think putting the law in the right place and putting Christ in the center.
Yeah, it's really interesting how Ellen White not only gave them support, but how they traveled together to camp meetings all over the country, wherever they could go to make that presentation. Uh,
Yeah.
you almost get the sense that more members of the church were getting enthused about the message than some of the leadership of the church. Um,
Yeah. I read one of the, I think it was Ellen G. White's writing note from 1888, I think it's called. I have it in Logos. Um, where like Joseph Bates, Kilgore, Loveboro, they were like a kind of, I'm for sure like Bates and Kilgore, they were like pretty much saying, "Oh, we are saved by our obedience." And they were like more, but I don't recall their names. They were more leaders. They were like, "Oh, we are." I think I froze again.
you're doing good. Go ahead.
Okay, okay. There were more.
Okay, pause it. Just hit pause. I know.
There were like some big leaders in the church that were not accepting righteousness by faith, and they were pretty much they they said our salvation is by obedience to the law, and a lot of people were following them, and this message, like as I say in my paper, there's two gospels: the gospel by works and the gospel of salvation by righteousness by faith. And they were like teaching in following salvation by works.
So, as I had a chance to kind of go through the paper, looking at the role and the discussion of the nature of Christ, um, you had some interesting resources there, and I appreciate the use of Desire of Ages and Steps to Christ. I thought that was very insightful as well. Um, so we we sort of have within our church today, I'm probably referring to our theologians, we sort of have still two kind of camps, that Jesus was more divine than he was flesh, and it's almost moved now to a majority of Adam before the fall. And so, the Adventist doctrine is really quite simple, that Jesus was fully man and he was fully God. And so uh, when you wrote about that, uh, did you learn anything new?
Um, I think I was a more a confirmation of what I I have learned, because I have had that discussion about before in the college about like Jesus nature, but like I think the main point is like it was our substitute, so he had to be fully human in order to be our substitute, to be worth and to be accepted from God. He had to be like our fully substitute. So, and I have read a couple of books about it, like other ideologies like last generation theology, the awakening movement. They say, oh yeah, like Christ has our same nature, so we can become like Christ, and like we can become perfect, and like become, and in the end they end up rejecting God, Jesus sacrifice. And that's not the point. For me, that's not the point. For me, like we needed a substitute. Jesus was our substitute, and he let us example of dependence on God. I think that's the example that we have to follow when he said, like, be like me.
So what I think I'm hearing you say is that as our substitute, he fully identified with our nature, that he took the failure of the entire human race. Was he the substitute for every human being?
Yeah.
And then he paid in full our penalty for that.
Ellie, I'm going to try to quote Ellen G. White because Desire of Ages is one of my favorite books. She says that he suffered what we had to suffer in order so we can enjoy the reward that he deserved, that we don't deserve. So it's something like in those lines. And in order to that, Jesus had to have temptation like us. I think one of the biggest temptations that I see in the gospel is like Satan offering the world to him without going through the cross, without like Satan offering Jesus the world without being on the cross. And I think that's a temptation that goes way above any temptation that we can live right now. And that's when we see the pain he was going through before the crucifixion. And Satan gave him that option. Okay, I'm going to give you the world without going to the cross. Like, what I don't even think about it, and I ask myself, what love they God have for us, that he rejected this only for us. It's like I'm going to choose um, pain and agony for a moment, for because he loves us.
And the fact that he entered into the second death and not the first death, it was more than just pain and suffering.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
actually entered the lake of fire death when he said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" That is the cry of every person that would go into the lake of fire.
yeah. Like,
That's pretty profound in my book.
yeah, for me, yeah, 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 I know what I mean. That it's pretty much like, um, how can I put it into words? Like, feeling the condemnation or like doom, being doomed, and like, I don't know, like suffering our penalty, pretty much what we deserve.
Mhm. So, did you find that in some of your research that I'm thinking of like George Knight and some others, some of them kind of downplay it and aren't real big fans of Jones and Wagner. Did you notice that at all in any of your research?
I think I found one. I don't recall that what book was that it talks more about the differential of the laws, and how Wagner, and John said, the I think a lesson is talking about the law, like the Ten Commandments, and the people were saying no, 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 still believing at this day. I think that, oh no, it's talking about the ceremonial law, but I think it's like as Wagner and Jones understood it, it's like it's about talking about the Ten Commandments.
And I think Ellen White eventually confirmed that.
Yeah, and she was with them preaching it, so that's a confirmation to me as well.
Um, so, the purpose of our scholarship is that we want to see this message grow and become of greater emphasis, especially with our pastors who are graduating and going out into ministry, because we believe this is the part of the last great message given to the world.
That's why I titled my paper "The Message of the Remnants," because
That was well done, too, by the way. Thank you.
I like that.
So,
I encountered justification by faith twice in my life. Every time make a difference. The first time was I had a mixture of sanctification and justification. I was like mixing both together. So my first encounter with justification, pure justification, was like, okay, this is justification by faith, and this is sanctification. And the second time was with the three angels messages.
yeah, you mentioned that there was a seminar at Southern. Do you remember who did the seminar at Southern?
It was this pastor named Joel Barrios.
Hmm.
He was the Hispanic pastor in the Southern Church, the Hispanic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know.
He's in Florida, I think now. Yeah, Florida.
So,
There were like
yeah.
six pastors giving different presentations.
Oh, and it was just one of those.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it was. It was a mixture. One introducing Pastor Joel introduced like our mission that we have to prepare the road or the way for Jesus' second coming. And there was another pastor from Florida that he said like our way to prepare the road is learning, living the changing messages, and preaching them.
Okay, very good. So when we look at this message as a church, are you getting a sense that we are growing more towards the proclamation of justification by faith? Is that something you are sensing in your peers, your fellow students?
In the students, yes, yes. In the membership, mm,
A little
it-
more challenging.
because I have preached so many times about justification by faith, but there's always a couple of members say, "Oh yeah, that was so nice, but you have to preach the real food on the or like something like Revelation, Daniel. I'm like, if we understand like justification by faith, there's no way. Then it's not helpful at all to learn all the prophecies. And but I don't know. I have been involved in the Hispanic community pretty much my whole life, and uh, in our countries, the pastors are not doing the job on teaching the justification by faith. So a lot of people who come from Hispanic countries bring this like a legalistic view of salvation.
Hmm.
I used to, every time I go to a new church to preach, I preach like in 6, 8 different churches. Try to make a survey, an anonymous survey, and ask how are we saved? And I give 3 options: by works, by Christ plus the work of the Holy Spirit. That's the second, and the third one, by justification by faith. And a lot of people pick the second one, half and half.
Very interesting. Why do you think it is that coming from other countries, it's more legalistic? Um,
Because they preach a lot about like obedience, mainly obedience, 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 as a more important than relationship with God. As long we obey, we are doing fine. As long we go to church, stuff like that, and it's more focused on the action, my actions. So for me, when the uh, someone asked me about what is the gospel is like the work of God for my salvation. It's not about me, it's about what God did. It's not what I'm doing or what I can do. And that's why when I preach about this topic, there's like always some members that come and talk to me saying like, yeah, like your sermon are too light, or they use different synonyms to synonyms to refer to my sermon when I preach about justification. And before, when I used to preach about obedience, right, I I feel kind of ashamed to say this, but when I preach salvation through obedience, I remember nobody telling me, "Oh, you're doing wrong," and like people were praising, like, "Yeah, you are doing what you were supposed to do. You are preaching the law of God because the Seventh-day Adventists are established to preach about the Ten Commandments, and we have to keep doing this." And I don't remember anybody like for 5 years, nobody telling me like you're doing wrong.
so you do you suppose that is because of how the evangelists are adding people to the church? To me, it's sort of an intriguing problem.
Yeah, it is intriguing. It's intriguing, and that's why I felt the call to become a pastor, to help people. And because, every time we eat during potluck, we share our ideas. And I remember sharing my ideas, legalistic idea. Like when I came to the United States, I was against, and it is not only me, it was like at least all, all the churches that I knew from El Salvador, they were against like celebrating birthdays, Christmas, because that wasn't like something for Christians. That wasn't made for the world made those ideologies to so that people can focus on something else and know the law that you were supposed to be preaching. And I came with that ideology and I made war against people who thought different than me. So that's why I'm really excited about this, because I have lived, and I don't want people to be like me or how I used to be.
So, Eli, what is your country of origin?
El Salvador.
El Salvador.
Mhm.
Oh, wonderful.
It's different in Guatemala, Honduras, because here I have been in churches that are like 19 different countries. Like the church that I'm attending now, there's like 21 different countries represented in the church. And I think most of the people that I have talked to, they confronted the same problem, that they didn't understood well salvation.
Wow, very interesting. I'm just thinking maybe we need to offer the scholarship at universities further south. Just thinking out loud.
Would
So
be a good idea.
yeah. um, so obviously this has had a profound personal impact on you and your family. You mentioned your wife in your sermon. What does she do?
She's a CNA in the hospital. She was studying nursing, but theology is really expensive,
Yeah.
and um, she's planning on going back to college.
Okay.
And hopefully she can finish. And she tells me stories about her work, and one of those that this lady from she was seeing, she was taking care of. Like that's for me, that the three angel messages. you know People living in salvation by works, being in pain, suffering, being tormented, and they receive the gospel and everything changed. Like rest, happiness come to their life. Like my wife says, like she cannot explain the difference from before and after Christ. I can say before and after Christ. And like she was all happy, and she was one pretty much one of the last days that my wife talked to her. She was like kind of worried and kind of tearing. And my wife asked her, "Why are you crying?" And she replied, like, um, the the same way that she saw salvation, she taught salvation to other people, and that those people might be going through the same pain that she was. And my wife told her, like, she was going to the nursing home, I think, and my wife told her, like, now your mission to preach about the right gospel to the people and she was like, light came to pray. She said, like, yeah, you are right. Can you believe how many people can I talk to? How much time I going to have from now on to share what I experience right now? And like for me, that's like the three angel messages when Babylon falls down, and like now I have that to share this message with other people.
It you could just imagine the joy if we go back in time that must have been in Ellen White's heart as she listened to this message begin to grow within the church. You can kind of sense that same kind of delight and growth that was taking place back in our history that your wife is sharing. I'm so glad that your wife has that wonderful ministry. I find that quite positive and quite uplifting. Um, so obviously our intent is that we catch a vision of this and it becomes part of our global message to the world as Seventh-day Adventists, because we still believe this is the best news in the whole world.
Yeah,
So,
that's
so,
what else can be better than that?
so do you see yourself doing pastoral work or evangelism? Do you have a niche that you see yourself in?
I like pastoral because I've been in elder for 7 years, and I have been working with youth, with uh, children, with a lot of ministry. I also like public evangelism. I have been doing a lot last year, this year. I also got invited to preach in Kansas next month, and I like when people. Um, I, Normally I have like a 300 message. I've been working in like 8 sermon series to give it the whole week, and I was changing as long as I studied them, I keep renewing them. And when people come to me and talk to me saying like, "Oh yeah, I never saw it that way," or like now I'm having a different understanding of these messages, that gives me joy. It really gives me joy. And but sometimes, as one conversation that I had with my wife, um, I after a week I don't feel like the people understand it as I would love to, and they don't experience that joy that I'm feeling. So she was the one who suggested me to study theology and to be in one church teaching and teaching and teaching until people understood.
Very good. And sometimes it takes that.
Yeah, because like Paul said, like we have to renew our mind, and that sometimes takes time, sometimes it takes less time, but to work on that constantly in one place, I think it's better to make sure that most of the people understand it the right way.
Eli, how are you feeling about our interview so far?
I'm feeling like really fine. It's like a conversation.
Good. Is there anything you would like to say to our board members that will be watching this?
That to keep doing this because this is important. I think this is the core of why or the reason that God established the our church to preach it. And and I understand that we have like this measure of the law, but I think it's like a combination that preaching the law of God, but having Christ in the center. I think that's the core of the message of the Seventh Day Adventist. Like understanding the right place of the law and putting God in the center. And by doing this, um, there are a lot of people who have like a question or they have never researched about this, and give them encouragement on doing this project. Um, it can change future pastor life. It going to cause a chain reaction. If it changes the pastor, the future pastor life, that are going to have an impact on the churches as well.
And the Sabbath School Quarterly is going through the covenants. And when
Yeah.
we understand that God, who is the author of our salvation, writes his law, normally a good writer explains to you the principles of that law so that they're manifested in you and the law becomes internalized under that new covenant, rather than an external thing of outward behavior that you must perform. And and so we should have joy in the law if it is written on our heart. But if the law is out there hanging on the wall and you're trying to perform it, it isn't very joyful.
It's going to be painful. It's going to be painful.
Yes.
So, like the law, and this is what I understood or I understand is that the life of our relationship with me and God, and relationship with me with other people. So instead of like focusing on doing work by work, I've been focusing on having a good relationship with Christ, and that going to be manifested with other people. So in the end, it like had to be like something inside of me.
Yeah. All right. I think we've covered everything that I wanted to cover. I'm glad you enjoyed the project. The way it goes from here, Eli, this recording will go out to all of our board members. Okay. And they'll listen to your sermon and they'll read your paper and they will listen to this interview. And then, like I say, we're working with 3 universities right now. And then our board sits down and we will have a conversation about each one of the candidates that have done the work. And then we'll be getting back in touch with you.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay.
I had to like I didn't realize or I kind of did, but it was too late that the sermon when I recorded it, well, I didn't record it, but like um at church they forgot to turn off the other mics and kind of sounded with a little echo.
Yeah.
And, oh,
I,
normally they had to turn on all the mics to get rid of that echo, but
yeah, it was real full sound. It was very, very full sound. You had more sound than, well, you were blessed with lots of recording. I knew exactly what had happened when I heard it, and it's okay. Um, those things happen in technology, and uh, I think we could still understand everything that was said, Eli.
Okay, sounds good to me.
It was a little more challenging, but that's okay.
Yeah, I imagine. I imagine.
Yeah. All right. Well, blessings to you. And you'll be hearing back from us here. I don't know, Sherry, what our timeline is for union.
Within a couple weeks, but
Mm,
we'll work through as our timeline goes. So we will
that's
get that
fine,
together
that's
soon.
fine, all the time. I really appreciate the work of all you are doing, and this is a great ministry. And I didn't imagine, people doing this and having this ministry. I'm really happy.
Well, thank you so much. And our board enjoys what they are doing. And they count it a real privilege to be able to just reach out and embrace young people and give them an opportunity, Eli, to go a little deeper. We just know that our generation has had their opportunity and it is now yours. Yours isn't the future, you are the present.
And uh, I read this book in Spanish, so I tried to translate the from event of the last events or something like that. She said like there's one in generation encouraging the other generation to enter to the new Canaan. So pretty much this is right now, one generation trying to encourage the next generation so they can be prepared to enter the,
It makes it very fun. All right.
yeah.
Well, blessings to you. Thank you very much for your time and all that you've invested in it. And we'll keep you in our prayers. And when do you finish up your year?
You mean like graduation?
No, no. For
He's a senior.
oh, you're senior. Are you finished now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I-
All right. Very good. Well, congratulations on that.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you.
And so you've got a church to go to work at?
Not right now. I have a couple of that they told me that they are interested in me,
Okay.
but they're waiting some openings. So
Okay.
I'm praying and waiting.
All right. Well, blessings, and maybe some of our board members will contact their conferences and share this interview with them. You never know.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Blessings. You take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.